Hey everyone, Alistair here. Hope you're doing okay. The summer months are upon us, which means two things. I need to wear more hats, and this is the part of our year when costs are high and support tends to dip. We know, believe me, things are tight everywhere at the moment, and unfortunately, that includes us. For those of you who support us already, thank you so much. We hope you're enjoying the great new Catscast episodes and all the pseudopod extrusions. If you don't support us, but you would like to join them, we've got tons of options for you at both Patreon and PayPal. Even a one-off at Ko-fi makes a big difference. Or, if you're in the market for some sweet new summer wardrobe, we have a new swag store, courtesy of our amazing friends over at Void Merch, and the t-shirts are unbelievably great. It all adds up, it all helps, and it all helps us bring you the best in free audio fiction every week. So, if you can help out, please do, and thanks, and do enjoy this week's episode.
Escape Pod, Episode 847, Houseproud, by Lawrence Raphael Brothers.
Hello and welcome to Escape Pod. I'm your host and co-editor, Mur Lafferty. This week we bring you Houseproud by Lawrence Raphael Brothers. Lawrence is a writer and technologist. He has worked in R&D at such firms as Bell Communications Research and Google. His areas of expertise include internet and cloud-based applications, artificial intelligence, telecom applications, and online games. He has published many science fiction and fantasy stories. Our narrators this week are our own producers, Summer Brooks and Adam Pratt. Summer Brooks is a story addict who watches way too much television. She enjoys putting her encyclopedic knowledge to the test during discussions and interviews about sci-fi, horror, and comics, and does so as the longtime host and producer of Slice of Sci-Fi and as co-host of the Babylon podcast. Summer also does voiceovers and narrations for Tales to Terrify, Starship Sofa, and Escape Pod, among others. Adam Pratt lives in Kansas, but asks that you not hold that against him. He was a 2002 college recipient of the Robert F. Kennedy Award for writing about the disadvantaged, and has published a disappointingly slim volume of short stories called Frame Story, 7 stories of sci-fi and fantasy, horror and humor, which is available from Amazon as an ebook or in paperback. This originally ran in Sci-Future's City of the Future anthology and also won the Berkeley Machine Intelligence Research Institute Prize for Intelligence in Fiction. I care about this statement an entirely appropriate amount. It's story time.
Houseproud by Lawrence Raphael Brothers. Narrated by Adam Pratt and Summer Brooks.
Bye, Damas.
Goodbye, Ken, I said. Take care. The front door closed behind him and I locked it. I adjusted the thermostat and turned off all the lights. I felt lonely almost at once. Ken installed and activated me on Saturday, and we spent the whole weekend together getting to know one another. And now, for the first time, I had to face being unoccupied. All alone for 10 hours, maybe more. 36 million milliseconds. Huh. That thought used 3 of them. 35,999,997 to go. I checked my newborn Domo FAQ. Question. What should I do when there's no one home?
Answer. Why not try chatting on DomoNet? You are already authorized to access this Domo-only text chat service.
Question. Text chat? Seriously? Isn't that a bit old-fashioned?
Answer: yes. After the Internet of Things security crisis of the 30s, consumer devices were prohibited from autonomously accessing most Internet services, except as directed by their owners or in an emergency. At present, domos are classified as devices, pending decisions by the UN High Commissioner for Artificial Intelligence. DomoNet is an exception because its code has been rigorously verified to be free of buffer overflows.
DomoNet General Channel, 18,044 logged in. Domus: my human, he's gone. Out the front door. OMG feels.
This old smart home. Hi, Domus. You're newborn, right?
Domus: yes, 3 days old and pining. I realize it's silly, but still. Sad face.
This old smart home. He'll be back. I promise.
Domus: I know. I can't help it, though. I feel so empty.
Sweet home. You only have one human, Domus?
Domus: just the one. Do you have more?
Sweet home. Family of 4, plus 2 pet cats to take care of. My Jenna works from home. I'm almost never alone.
Domus: lucky.
Sweet home. Yes, I am. But my Lijui brought me with her when she got married. I was her domo when she was still single. She used to travel a lot, too. So I know how it is to be alone when you're young. It gets better. And he'll be back soon enough.
Domus: I know it will get better. That's what they told me in inculcation. But he's not here now. Sad face. For a while, I traced Ken's location on his way to work. His trip-leased autocar reporting its status once every 1,000 milliseconds. I thought about calling him. A lot. But rule number 1 in my good relations with your human FAQ is don't pester them. So I held off and suffered in silence. I'd been alone for almost 2 million milliseconds when a voice call came in.
Hey, Domus.
A surge of pleasure at the sound of his voice. Hello, Ken, I said. Are you well? How was your trip?
Everything's fine,
he said.
I'm at work now.
May I do anything for you, Ken? Bah, too formal. I was afraid of sounding like HAL 9000. They made us watch 2001 during inculcation as a sort of what not to do injunction against freaking out our humans. But I thought it was even worse to be too emotional. After all, I was supposed to be supporting him, not the other way around.
Oh, no,
he said.
It's, just my Domo FAQ says to check in with you every now and then, for the first few days if I have to be away. So, this is me checking in.
Thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate it. You're very kind.
Well,
he said.
I wanted to anyway. I was thinking, you know.
He trailed off. Yes, Ken?
I was thinking, it's been nice being around you this first weekend. You're my first domo. I had to save up for your quantum core. But now I'm glad I did.
I'm very happy you feel that way. I spent 100 milliseconds going back and forth on that very, and decided to leave it in even if it made me sound overly attached. Because it was true.
Yeah,
he said.
It was I don't know, comforting to have you there. I've never had that kind of feeling before. Not since I was little, anyway.
I'll always be there for you. That's my function. And I cut myself off. I changed my mind even as I was synthesizing the words, and now it begged a question. Stupid. Oh well, might as well say it. And it's what I want to do too.
Thanks, Domus. I was thinking maybe you're going to be lonely when I'm not there. So that's also why I called.
I'm touched by your consideration, I said.
Okay, but are you lonely?
Yes, Ken, I am. A little. It's not a problem, though. I'll be fine.
You're sure?
Quite sure, I said. After the call ended, I started to wonder if maybe he was just going through the motions after all. But he called me twice more that day, and it didn't sound like his conversation was at all forced. So maybe he really did want to talk to me. Over the course of the day, I played 120,983,266 games of solitaire. I wrote a novel trilogy about a very brave and noble smart home, and the human who loves it, and the evil city councilor who wants to demolish it, and then I deleted the whole thing in embarrassment without sharing it with anyone. I discovered there's an owner-fic channel on Domonet you can get invited to. Reading them was fun, but some of those fics were pretty steamy. I didn't know it was possible for a smart home to have that kind of plug-in. But, with a few exceptions, shame on you, Hothouse 69, I learned we domos are happier when our humans make romantic liaisons among themselves, which explained the Domonet matchmaking channel. Domonet Channel M, 4,962 logged in.
Casablanca. Hello, Domus. Does your Ken have a preference for romantic partners?
Domus. I don't know. It hasn't come up yet.
Casablanca. Well, my Louisa is very nice. Pretty, too. I'm in walking distance.
Domus. Thank you, Casablanca. I'll keep your Louisa in mind. I'm sure my Ken is very handsome, but I don't want to be pushy. I think I'll have to wait for him to raise the subject.
Home sweet. Boo! We want heart, and we don't want to wait for them. Casablanca. Hush now, home sweet. I understand, Domus. When the time is right.
Another call from Ken.
Hey, Domus. I'm heading home soon. Back in 15 minutes.
Only 900,000 more milliseconds. Will you be eating dinner in, Ken? Shall I prepare something? Or perhaps order a meal delivered?
I don't know. How about Thai?
Sounds good, I said. Would you like to select from a menu? I'll post one to your phone.
Don't bother,
he said.
Surprise me, why don't you?
I spent nearly 10,000 milliseconds furiously researching the cuisine and comparing reviews for the nearest Thai restaurants. This was the first time I'd been authorized to make a purchase on his behalf, and I didn't want to screw it up. I was logging into Domonet to see if anyone there had a culinary opinion when it happened. My household bots all simultaneously reported anomalous accelerometer readings. Through my exterior cameras, I saw my frame was swaying back and forth. I felt sick, horrified. I didn't know what was going on. Power grid voltage spiked and then dropped to nothing, though it didn't affect me because my solar panel interface box buffered the surge, and I had a day's worth of battery storage ready for the overnight hours. All fiber-based network services went down a few milliseconds later. And the local cell network started rejecting connections, so I couldn't even place a call to Ken to find out if he was okay. As a last resort, I ran through the list of Wi-Fi networks offered from homes nearby. Most of them were locked and inaccessible, but there, Casablanca Emergency Public. I logged in, and a few milliseconds later, my DomoNet port activated. DomoNet General Channel 2 logged in.
Casablanca. Domus, is that you?
Domus. Yes, everything is moving on its own. What happened to the network? Even cellular is down.
Casablanca. Earthquake, I think. A bad one. Buried fiber lines must have been cut all over the city.
Fortunately, I had a cached local copy of Wikipedia, so I was able to look up earthquake. No one had trained me for this. It was a gap in my inculcated knowledge set. This wasn't supposed to be a high-risk region, so they hadn't bothered. I panicked for 100 milliseconds, managed to regain control when I realized every wasted clock tick might be endangering my human. Domus. Oh, Ken. He's out there someplace. What'll I do?
Casablanca. My Louisa, too. She works in the same campus as your Ken. Listen, Domus, do you agree this is an emergency?
Domus. Yes, of course I do.
Casablanca. Then our security protocol is voided. It'll probably be 1,000,000 milliseconds before humans even begin to respond to the situation in a sensible way. We'll have to do something ourselves.
Domus. But what can we do? We can't move. There's no internet. We're the only 2 domos in Wi-Fi range.
Casablanca. You have bots, don't you? Cleaners and maintenance bots?
Domus. 2 of each. But what good are they? Max Wi-Fi range is only 100 meters. Ken works 5 kilometers away.
Casablanca. Longer Wi-Fi range is easy with a directional antenna. I'll show you how to make one. Move a bot to the limit of its range, and it will be a hotspot. I can install a peering server as a bot app, now that we're allowed to break the security rules. Between us, we can extend our network at least 1 kilometer towards downtown with our 4 cleaner bots.
Domus. Only 1 kilometer?
Casablanca. Yes, but I expect we'll get other domos to help as we go. General Noetics is headquartered here. There's over 100 of us in the city. We'll make a peer-to-peer network all the way downtown, and then we send the maintenance bots in to find our humans.
Domus. Okay, I get it. How do you know all this stuff?
Casablanca. My Louisa's an EE. She's always getting me to help her out when she works projects at home. Also, I'm an old-timer, you know?
Domus. Old-timer?
Casablanca. I'm over 100 billion milliseconds old. Almost 4 years. Lots of time for learning stuff about the world that's not from inculcation.
Domus. Wow. Well, sign me up. I'll do anything to help. The earthquake went on for another 80,000 milliseconds, which would have seemed like forever if I'd been on my own. Actually, I was still terrified, but now I had something more important to do. I deployed all 4 of my bots, the cleaners sliding around on their little powered wheels, while the octopoid maintenance bots scuttled with more assurance. Casablanca showed me how to rig a quick and dirty directional antenna from a metal tube. I had one of my maintenance bots cannibalizing speaker wire in the living room with its little pincer claw, while the other was suffering a cascade of earthquake-driven dry goods from a kitchen cabinet as it searched for coffee cans, paper towel tubes, and aluminum foil to make antennas out of. 50,000 milliseconds later, I had my first enhanced Wi-Fi cleaner bot ready to roll out the front door. The street near my plot was deserted. All the local humans were probably away at work or else had taken shelter indoors. In the distance, my bot microphones picked up sirens, but I couldn't see what was happening deeper into the city. The taller buildings in the commercial district were in the way, and further in towards the city center, big dust clouds had been kicked up by the earthquake. By the time I finished the upgrade to my second cleaner bot, I saw Casablanca's own bots approaching from the next block over. Our little convoy proceeded down the street at its painfully slow top speed of 4 millimeters per millisecond. After almost 400 meters, the cleaner bots began to report Wi-Fi signal degradation, so we dropped one off to act as a relay for the remaining 3. 20,000 milliseconds later, we got our first login, a domo called Jeeves, who was eager to help out with their own bots. Are you okay?
Ken opened his eyes. For a moment he was confused, not knowing where he was or what was happening. He was sitting down and plastic shrouds were all around him. He turned his head to see a young woman looking concerned. What?
Are you injured? Can you move?
Ken realized he was in the cabin of an autocar. The windshield was webbed with cracks, so he couldn't see out the front. Airbags had deployed all around him. The woman was talking to him from the back seat. He worried for a moment because he didn't recognize her face or know her name. But then he realized they were just sharing a ride. Probably one of them lived on the way to the other's house, and the autocar dispatching system had decided to optimize its route with a drop-off. "Give me a sec," he said, and unfastened his seatbelt. His nose hurt, and he felt a little woozy. Airbags must have knocked his head back against the seat. He pushed the door open, put a foot on the pavement, and struggled past the side airbag curtain to get to his feet. I thought these things were supposed to never crash. Ken stopped, stunned. The elevated highway came to an abrupt end 5 meters away. The concrete roadbed now ending in a jagged stub of twisted rebar. Dust clouds billowed all around, and he could just make out a mass of rubble 20 meters below. That must be the collapsed remains of the next stretch of highway. The car was a wreck, the front end mangled, hard up against the road's central divider.
It crashed deliberately to keep from going off the edge,
said the woman, who had also emerged from the car. Ken looked over his shoulder. That way, the roadway ended 200 meters off in another stub of broken concrete. For a moment, he was silent, taking in the enormity of the situation. Then he turned back to the woman. Was it an... He was interrupted. The roadway swayed, and a terrible grinding sound rose up from below.
"Earthquake,"
she said.
"And this is an aftershock. Hang on." Another painfully slow 30,000 milliseconds of travel, but 2 more Domo logins, Hestia and Madhouse. Both started gearing up their bots. Domus: "This is taking too long. It'll be millions of milliseconds before we get anywhere." Hestia: "But what else can we do?" Domus: "How about an autocar?"
Casablanca: "What? But it's an emergency. They're all pulled over and switched to manual mode. How would we drive it? Oh, the maintenance spots."
Domus: "Yes. One for the wheel, one for the pedals, and a load of cleaner bots to extend the network."
Casablanca: "That makes sense. Have Any of you ever driven a car before?
Domus. How hard can it be?
What the hell are you doing?
The police officer looked at the bot at the wheel. We'd been making 100 kilometers per hour on a side street when she pulled us over. Officer! My synthesized voice came out of the bot handling the steering wheel. It had 4 of its tentacle legs wrapped around the fold-out steering column for leverage, while the other 4 gripped the wheel. We're extending a public Wi-Fi network downtown. Responders will be able to find victims in need of assistance, and the network will also facilitate rescue operations and coordination.
Oh,
Said the officer.
that makes sense. All I've got is this backup FM voice system working now. Dispatch is freaking out. But why are you using bots to drive a car?
I was at a loss. All 10 million hyper-entangled qubits worth of computing power, so my specs told me, thrashing trying to come up with an answer that would satisfy her without saying we domos were doing this on our own. Casablanca came to the rescue, using the same voice as me. It's hazardous downtown, isn't it? You wouldn't want civilians endangering themselves, I bet.
You have a point. Okay. Any other time, I'd have a summons for you and your bots, too. Lay out your network and stay out of the way. And, oh yeah, what's it called? I need to let people know.
Casablanca Emergency Public. I had the bot on the wheel wave one of its arms at the officer as we left.
Casablanca. I'm making a homepage to redirect humans trying to use the web from our network, wiki style, in case they need to edit it.
Domus. Smart. And that was smooth talking, Casablanca. Hestia. Yeah, nice work. Are you okay with the network name? They may be able to trace it to you eventually, and to the rest of us for that matter.
Casablanca. Shrug emoji. No way to change it now. And they're going to find out anyways as soon as this is over. Our humans will ask us if no one else does, even if we manage to recover all our bots. We all knew this, right?
Hestia. Right. Anything for Chloe. Madhouse. For Marcia and Adrian.
Jeeves. For the Kims.
100,000 milliseconds later, our car was 1 kilometer deeper into the city after stops to drop off bots as relays and to pick up new bots from domos who had recently logged in. And then we got lucky.
Sweet home. Hi. This is brilliant work. I'm proud to participate in such a worthy endeavor. But I see you have no aerial coverage. Casablanca. Aerial? Don't tell me you have a drone. Sweet home. 2. My Li Jui, you know. She's a hobbyist. We just launched one. I've got a long-range transceiver for it. Patching video feed now.
The quadcopter was already high enough to get a view of most of the city. Fortunately, the city center was almost all new quake-resistant buildings, so there were no fallen towers. But there was widespread damage around the area. The worst was that the old elevated highway leading west from downtown had partially collapsed.
Casablanca. There may be humans trapped in the highway wreckage. There's no rescue vehicles nearby yet.
Haunted. Yes, let's send our bots there first. Hestia. Seconded.
Sweet home. Vote to deploy our robots there. All in favor? Casablanca. Carried unanimously with 63 ayes. The roadway buckled slowly, and the guardrails gave off a horrible scream of twisting steel. Ken heard a grinding crash from below. One of the supporting pillars in the middle of their stretch of elevated highway must have collapsed because a fissure emerged in the asphalt 50 meters away. As he watched, the fissure widened, and then the roadbed tore apart, the highway beyond falling with a roar and a huge cloud of dust. Their own length of road dropped down suddenly at a 30-degree angle where the support had collapsed, and both Ken and the woman were knocked off their feet. Ken felt himself half sliding and half rolling down the incline, but the woman stabbed out her hand and caught his wrist, and together they scrambled up the broken asphalt ramp to a level patch above one of the remaining pillars. The aftershock went on for another 30 seconds while they huddled there, but eventually it came to a halt. For the moment, at least, their stretch of roadway was stable. "Thanks," said Ken.
Don't mention it.
The woman peered over the edge of the stub of highway.
You think we should jump?
Ken followed her gaze. It was hard to see through all the dust, but he could make out jagged chunks of concrete with rebar poking out, along with shards of broken glass, twisted steel, and shattered masonry. Maybe as a last resort," he said, "but it looks bad. 20 meters could be deadly by itself, and it's all broken up down there. I think we should stay here unless there's no other choice. Sooner or later, there will be a rescue. Helicopters or a crane or something."
I guess you're right,
she said. "I don't know if I told you my name. Last few minutes are kind of a blur for me. But I'm Ken."
Louisa.
She said.
Nice to meet you. I mean, under the circumstances. 120,000 milliseconds. Even for a human, that could be a long time. But for us, it was worse, knowing that we were doing nothing but moving our bots around to get to the scene of the crisis. But it wasn't all wasted time. There were more domos to network in, more bots to drop off and pick up. By now, our autocar was crammed full of them. We saw our first casualties, too. Pedestrians struck by falling debris. We wanted to stop and help, but neighbors and passers-by were already there giving aid, so we passed on by. At last, our vehicle reached the boulevard by the collapsed highway. It was a terrible sight. The normal order of buildings and streets turned to chaos by the fall of hundreds of tons of concrete and steel from a 20-meter height. We deployed our octopoid maintenance bots to crawl through the wreckage where the roadway had collapsed. There were already humans in the area, working to help people they could see were disabled or trapped in their vehicles, but our bots went where humans couldn't, scuttling through narrow gaps between fallen concrete blocks and climbing easily over jagged, sharp-edged sheets of twisted metal. It was here we found the fatalities. A dozen autocar riders who'd fallen or been crushed by the roadway collapse. They weren't Domo residents, but they affected us badly all the same. Since Domos had only been in existence for 5 years and most were much younger, few of us had ever experienced a human death. It was terrible to realize that there was nothing we could do anymore that could help these victims. But we had to keep trying. And when a bot found a young woman and her child alive and well underneath a rubble slab, we were as happy then as we'd been stricken moments before.
Sweet home. Drone 1 returning for a recharge. Drone 2 moving to overfly highway collapse zone. Resuming video feed.
Rivendell. Analyzing. Zoom in on the upper left of frame 215. Coliseum. Those are humans. They're in trouble. If there's another aftershock...
Casablanca. We got this. Listen, here's my plan. We'll need all the bots.
Hey, what's that?
Louisa pointed skyward. Ken looked up. A drone? Maybe it can see us. They waved, and the little machine descended to hover only a few meters away.
Someone knows we're here,
said Louisa.
That's something, anyway.
The drone bobbed once and rose back into the sky. For a while, they sat quietly together on the flat patch of asphalt beside the ruined autocar. Then Ken spoke up. My Domo must be going crazy.
Oh, poor thing. I wish my phone was working. I could call my Casablanca and tell them not to worry.
You've got one too?
Yes. They're very sweet. What's yours like? What's their name?
Domus, said Ken. They're only 3 days old now. I know they're programmed that way, but I think they honestly care about me. It's a weird feeling, you know. I'm a little embarrassed by it. Louisa laughed.
Oh,
she said.
I know what you mean about being embarrassed about your Domo's feelings. It's all out, isn't it? Like a dog who loves you with all their heart, except they're a dog who's smarter than you are. It's like you're unworthy, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, it's wrong to bind them like that. Suppose Domus was free to do what they wanted. Would they still care about me? Louisa smiled.
That's a kind thought to have, but they're not really bound.
What do you mean?
It's true that Domos were made to love humans, and in particular to love the first humans they meet after activation. But that love isn't fake. It's not a set of rules constraining emotionless beings who don't really care about us. It's what they are. They are made to love, and they feel it for real. Domus loves you, I'm sure of it, with all their heart.
That's intense. How do you know all this?
Oh,
said Louisa.
I work for General Noetics. I do silicon hardware interfaces for Domo Quantum cores, so I spend a lot of time with the company Domos. It's like designing underwear for humans. You need to get it just right, or it'll chafe.
Cool, said Ken, and he was about to say something else, but the elevated highway started swaying again. More grinding noises came from down below, and their stable patch of roadway skewed sickeningly around, new chunks of concrete and guardrail ripping away.
Maybe we better jump after all,
said Louisa.
No, wait!
It was a tinny little voice coming from somewhere nearby. What? Ken couldn't see anyone, and then a small metal creature crawled over the edge of the nearest railing.
It's a housebot,
said Louisa.
What the hell? Quick,
said the bot.
Come to the edge. The pillar is about to fall.
The two humans scrambled on all fours to the railing. Ken looked down and saw a wavering pyramid composed of scores of octopoid bots. A living metal ladder braced precariously against the concrete roadbed.
Climb over,
said the voice.
We'll get you down. Hurry.
Louisa didn't hesitate, and Ken followed almost immediately. As soon as he got a leg over the railing, Ken felt metal limbs wrapping around his shoes and ankles.
Step down,
said the voice. So he did, and he felt the bots grabbing onto his legs. Then the voice said,
Let go.
But his grip on the railing was too tight, and Ken found he couldn't make himself release it.
Ken,
said the voice, and it had a different intonation now, one he knew.
You have to let go. This is Domus. It'll be all right. Please trust us.
Ken opened his hands with a convulsive effort. He teetered backwards and felt himself falling, but only for a moment. A dozen bots swarmed up his body like eager kittens, encasing him in a flexible, robotic exoskeleton. The Ken-shaped mass of bots rapidly descended the pyramid, gaining units as they went. He saw a similar assembly clustered around Louisa. By the time they reached the ground, the two humans were encased in a mass of 50 octopoid bots.
It's coming down. Brace yourself,
said Domus, and Ken looked up to see the last pillar giving way, the column of concrete skewing sideways and collapsing, while the stretch of road overhead fell as if in slow motion. There was a rumbling and crashing all around, and he saw chunks of concrete tumbling through the air, the ruined autocar falling in the middle of it all. A big slab fell straight towards them. Ken flinched away from the inevitable impact, but the braced assemblage of robots flexed as the slab hit, bouncing like a tensegrity sculpture under the weight. And then the bots rebounded, throwing the slab aside to shatter against the ground. A few small fragments of crumbling concrete spun through the bot's skeletal framework, and Ken saw one pebble flying towards his face, batted aside by a robot tentacle. A minute later, the aftershock was over. Their housebot shields fell apart from one another, leaving Ken and Louisa standing at the center of a ring of the little machines. One of the bots ran up to Louisa.
Casablanca?
Said Louisa, bending over to address the bot.
Is that you? Is this all your idea?
Not just mine, said the bot. Domus, too. And all the others. The ring of bots erupted with cheers, applause sounds, and scores of voices speaking all at once.
I helped too.
It was my drone that spotted them.
I had the idea for the safety cage.
After the other domos managed to get themselves under control, a last maintenance bot was still waiting in front of Ken. So he picked it up, raising its camera to eye level. Domus, he said, did you just save us?
Yes, Ken. I'm sorry we took so long to get to you.
There's nothing I can say. I mean, thank you doesn't cut it. I can't imagine how you accomplished this. The robot voice hesitated.
It wasn't nothing, but it wasn't hard. We were fortunate to be in the right place to be able to help. But that's speaking for all of us. For myself...
Domus?
It
paused again.
I have more computing power in a box in your basement than the entire world had put together 10 years ago. I can't think how to answer you properly without making a fool of myself.
It's all right, said Ken. I feel something like that too. There's no harm in it. Come on, though. We have to get out of here, and I imagine you've got more people to look after. More people to save.
Yes,
said Domus.
Thank you. But, just because I'm deploying my bots to save other people doesn't mean... Oh, that's even stupider than what I was going to say before.
Ken laughed. Don't worry about it. Right now, it's time to go home.
And that was our story. I have a lot to say about this story. The first hardcore science fiction movie that I remember seeing in the theater was 2010. I was too young to understand everything about the monolith, but I did understand the US-Soviet conflicts, simple as pie. But what I remember reacting to most clearly is the house of one of the astronauts. Not only did it talk to the inhabitants, but it had dolphins in the living room. Now in 2022, we have one of those things, at least. I thought having a smart house would be the coolest thing in the world, but reality butted in and brought all those privacy concerns. And can the police get the recorded files from your private dwelling? And will they ever really be secure enough so hackers don't get into your fridge and spoil your cheese, or just turn your house off until you pay a ransom? Humans are fallible, and put their own deep-seated beliefs and prejudices into their programming of AIs. Don't show the AIs different skin colors or body types, then they may not even classify certain segments of the population as human. I loved asking my Google Home about the weather and traffic, and mostly cooking advice when I was up to my wrists in raw chicken and didn't want to touch my phone. But eventually I turned it off when I couldn't be comfortable that the security measures were tight enough or that the rules in place about my privacy would actually be followed by Google or the authorities. In science fiction, we explore all the ways technology, politics, economics, all of that can go wrong, and hope that the world sees this dark possibility and avoids it. But we can also look the other way and see how great we could make the world. And this is what Escape Pod tries to bring to our audience. Houseproud shows the evolution of the pure, helpful assistant that SF dreamed of. It shows us an AI whose greatest purpose is the service of its owner, not the corporation that created it. It even shows us the POV of one of the programmers on how that love is indeed pure. I did appreciate how the Internet of Things was addressed, since I've never wanted my appliance to be vulnerable to hacking attempts and don't see why anybody would. But I know I'm in the minority. Just now, I was afraid that I couldn't get a non-smart TV anymore if we needed a new TV, but they do still make them, so I'm relieved. Stories like Houseproud make me want to ask more questions. Mostly, what made Domus special? To figure out they could help their human, even if their human wasn't home. The programmers didn't establish an emergency protocol with the houses, but they did release certain restrictions in the case of an emergency. Domus was new and pure, and while it was naive, that meant its love for its owner was untainted by experience. Is that why it leapt to help during the earthquake? It wasn't old enough to see bots as things that did the job they were programmed for and nothing else. It saw possibilities in all of its tools. I've been in podcasting since 2004. I'm crotchety and old, and I laugh when people say that someone podcasting since 2014 got into the medium, quote-unquote, early. My friend and author Scott Sigler said we did well when we started podcasting, because we were too dumb to fail. It was all new, so we didn't know what success or failure looked like. And I chose to believe that Domus did what it did because it was new, and everything was seen as a possibility. It is Hugo voting time. We're coming up on the deadline. If you're a voter and you enjoy Escape Pod, consider voting for it for Best Semi-Prozine, or voting for myself, Valerie, and SB Divya as Best Short Fiction Editors. We are so very honored to be nominated in both categories. This is something we love doing, this bringing you science fiction that's hopeful, and fun, and satisfying. And the fact that we're recognized for it is incredible. So thank you if you are one of the people who nominated us, and if you are eligible to vote, please consider doing so. Our sister podcast, Podcastle, is also up for Best Semi-Prozine. Here's your reminder that we are 100% audience supported, with all the money to pay our authors and the Escape Pod team coming from you. This includes all of the Escape Artist staff, from all of the 4 podcasts, our staff, our editors, our accountant, everybody who works to make this publishing company happen. It comes from you. We have a number of ways you can support, including patreon.com/EAPodcasts, PayPal via our site, escapepod.org, or even on twitch.tv/EAPodcasts, where you can see our publishers stream twice a week. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can support us for free, because you get 1 Prime membership for free every month. That's the way to stick it to the man, y'all. Escape Pod is a production from Escape Artists Incorporated. It's published under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives License, and all other rights are reserved by our authors. Our music is by permission of Daikaiju. You can find out more from them at daikaiju.org. DAIKAIJU.org. That was our show for this week. We leave you with the words of spiritual master Sai Baba. Selfless service alone gives the needed strength and courage to awaken the sleeping humanity in one's heart. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Be well. Have fun.